How can I follow that?
Well, I didn't crash two airplanes.
How can I follow that? Oh my goodness. I did crash a couple airplanes they put on me while I was flying them. And sometime later I did a past life regression, a self-guided past life regression. And I found myself originally as a young 9-year-old boy in a sort of a grotto kind of thing. Beautiful lattice work around me and what have you, just in a garden. And I was wearing a white shirt and I was wearing knickers. And this was time of the First World War. And I progressed to flying an airplane. And I don't know which side I was on. It really doesn't make any difference. I had an airplane out in front of me that was my adversary, and I was shooting my weapons at this plane. And I followed it. I was hitting it with my bullets, and I followed it down till it crashed into a wooded area. And off I went. And at that point, it's a little difficult to put everything in its sequence, but the next thing that I remember was that I remember now anyway, that I asked, how does that affect me in this life? And the man's name that had done the maintenance on my airplane came to me so loud and clear that there was absolutely no question that was the person to whom I destroyed, or that I destroyed in that incident during the First World War. And there are several things that come up about this. Number one, even though it was war, I had to balance that experience. Even though it was supposedly justified because it was war, I still had to balance that experience in this lifetime. And I had, and like I say, this fellow did the maintenance on both airplanes that I crashed, that quit on me. In one case, he left a rag in the carburetor of the plane, and that's the reason that it quit on me while I was flying. And the other one was water in the gas, which I had specifically instructed that they clean the entire gas system because I knew I was having trouble with that. And so, like I say, his name came to me, and seemed to be a balancing, however you want to put it. And by the way, I knew the man in this lifetime quite well, and but it was a balancing type of thing. Now the other thing about it is that I had passengers in each one of these airplanes. In one case I had 2 young boys, and the other one I had a fellow that was more closely to my age. And I believe to this day that those people were also ones that I probably killed in a war or some other situation. Because if I took their life, I could balance it by giving them life back. Make any sense to anybody?
Yep.
So you are responsible for those things that happen to you. And those things that happen to you teach you lessons. And my talk today specifically, I try to pass on some things, some guidance as to the fact that there's nothing necessarily good or bad on this in this life. We're here, I believe, as a school, and everything that happens to us, good or bad, teaches us something that we need to know, that we can make life better for ourselves and for other people. And I'll read a couple of these things, and after I read what I wrote down here, I would be more than glad and happy to answer any questions that you might have, or try to answer them, because believe me, I don't know all of the answers. But I've been blessed just over and over and over again with life experiences that have been so wonderful. My wife and I have been married many, many times. I've also done past life regressions, and I bought her one time at a camel auction, along with a camel. She was tied to the camel's leg as a little girl. And I bought the camel, I think probably basically because she was tied to it. But before I had done this past life regression and knew anything about having camels, you have to know my wife really to understand all of this, and I'm still learning. But she brought home a camel one day. She came home at noon and said, what do you think about our having a camel out here in our little country zoo? I said, well, that one I think you ought to think about until tomorrow morning. She said, I can't do that. And when I heard that, I knew I'd been had, and I said, why? She said, well, it's going to be delivered this afternoon. So you see, there was a connection there. And later on, when I did this past life regression, there it was, the answer to that.
Wow.
And I guess it must have been okay because, the camel and I were connected there. Repeat the thing a little bit. And I've just had a wonderful, wonderful life. I've learned so much. And so my first how did we put this thing now? And the first thing I think we should know is that we're in a school, and each happening and all things we are aware of are there to teach us something. That sort of, it doesn't say there's anything good or bad here, positive or negative, but always remember to run everything through your gut, because that gut feeling is what's really going to tell you whether, how you should think about it, what you should do next. Because once it's happened, it's happened. And John gave a most wonderful example here just recently about Hamid Bey and him playing golf. Because Hamid Bey made a couple of real duffer shots. And they didn't turn out too badly, but John, as he said, he tried to kid him a little bit about what are you going to do on the next shot, or something like this. I don't know what your words were, but Hamid literally ignored him because I believe Hamid wanted simply to leave the past in the past, even though it was only moments before. It's something that we need to learn. The past is gone. Now let's go forward. Learn what we can from it and step out there and do the next thing. Know that we're responsible for what happens in our life. We accept or reject everything in life. So but that's, accepting or rejecting is a decision. We're not punished, nor are we rewarded. It's just how we view things. There's a lot of things that happen that are negative, but they teach us something. We know something more about ourselves or about the world just because they happen. They don't necessarily have to always be the most positive things, as we view positive things, such as my airplane crashing. But boy, it sure taught me a lot of things. And I am so pleased and so thankful that it did. Thoughts are things. Guard what you think. In this particular vein, thoughts being things, Edgar Cayce, and I've been a student of Edgar Cayce longer than I've been a Coptic. But Edgar Cayce said in his readings, I don't know as he said, but the evidence is that in his readings he had a tremendous difficulty differentiating between whether somebody had simply thought something or actually had done it. So thoughts are the precursors of the things that you do, but they're the creative force that is put into action to do them. And so, therefore, if the thought is fully formed, you're so close to the fact that you have done it that a psychic such as Edgar Cayce was not able always to pick up whether it was accomplished physically or simply mentally. So it's something to keep in mind. Hamid Bey taught us to live in the present. Things that just happened and are still already done, so leave them as a lesson for the present and go on. That's what I wrote down there. That's basically what I wrote down to indicate that I should tell you about his thing with the golfing. The last thing I'd like to say is live in love. Your decisions, your activities, and your relationships. We make our decisions in everything and anything that we do, no matter what it is. And if those decisions are made with love in your mind and your heart and your body and your soul, they'll be the right decisions right now at the right time. And I'll always, always tell you whether it's the right decision if you run it through your guts at the same time, because your guts are always telling you, should I accept this or shouldn't I accept this? Is this what I want or is it not what I want? Don't accept anything less than love, ever. Thank you.